I'm Scott Allen Miller. This is my life living in Leon, Nicaragua. For the second time in just 12 hours, I've had messages from people who have moved to Nicaragua and are in kind of hot water or not getting the situation that they were hoping for, because they did exactly the same thing, and that is hoping for a soft landing, thinking that coming into Nicaragua and looking for an easier way to move into, the easiest country to move into in the Western Hemisphere, is something that they need to do. And in each case, in every case I hear about, this leads to bad things. And there's some very specific things I want to warn you guys about in a very strong manner, because we have warned about them repeatedly in a soft manner, and it is not getting the message across, even to very regular viewers. So I want to get this point across really strongly right after the bump. Before we get started, I want to say I completely understand that moving to any new country, especially if it's your first time moving to a new country, and especially if it's your first time moving into Latin America, coming to any new country is going to be scary, and there's a lot going on, and you're worried about a lot of things. There's a lot of things you don't know, and it can be hard, and that is absolutely true, and I completely appreciate that. It's been a long time since I was moving to my first country, and I've moved to so many that for me, moving to a new country is a very casual process for the most part. But I remember that first time going to a new country, and it is scary, and it is just overwhelming. And so it's very, very easy to fall into wanting to try to find some way to make it easier. And even when you have people like me who are constantly recommending things and giving guidance, it's easy to say, yeah, but you've got this figured out, and you're doing this for experts. I'm going to seek out something easier. And this is a very dangerous process. You've been put into a position where you are susceptible to people who are preying on that. So if you're looking for a super easy process, what you're actually doing is opening yourself up to the people who are going to take advantage of people who are scared of moving to a new country. And one of the most prominent ways, there's two big prominent ways, I think, that this happens here in Nicaragua. One is the general push to San Juan del Sur. Now, we tell everyone that San Juan del Sur is full of things that don't help you move into Nicaragua. So from a cultural perspective, it doesn't fit, and you're not going to get a soft landing. You're simply going to push off whatever transition that you're looking at having. And there's a lot of things we warn about. That's not getting the point across. The biggest thing is all enclaves, period. There isn't any but, sometimes something. All enclaves put you in danger. They increase the risk of violent crime. They increase the risk of scams. They increase the risk of not understanding the environment you're in. They increase the isolation from the people who can help you, from the environment that you're there to get. Now, if your goal is an enclave, if your goal is enclave living, then obviously you can't avoid enclaves. But you need to understand that when we talk about the safety of Nicaragua, when we talk about the friendliness of Nicaragua, when we talk about your rights and the open environment and all the great things you can do and all the wonderful things about it, we're not talking about things you get in an enclave. Now, some enclaves don't take away all of those things, but they change your cost, they change your culture, they change your environment, and all the benefits that people come to Nicaragua for go away, or nearly all go away, and all of them are at risk of going away, except the weather, when you decide to be in an enclave. Every time we hear about people having significant issues in Nicaragua, it is because they're in an enclave, or it coincides with the fact that they're in an enclave. We really don't hear it. And it's not to say that people don't have challenges. It's not to say that people don't have problems, or that they don't fail in their process of moving to the country, meaning that they don't decide it was the wrong move for them when they're not in an enclave. But the amount that we hear about it is basically none. The real problems, 90% plus of people having problems, are those that are in enclaves. And so we just talked to someone who right now is having major, major issues in San Juan del Sur. Now, there's, of course, even there's some things that they could have done, but every time people have problems, we're immediately like, so you're in San Juan del Sur, right? There's things you have to know. Like, one, it is an expat-heavy enclave area, known famously even outside of the country, as the place for scammers. You have to assume that every interaction that's going to take place in town is a scam. Everything is overpriced. Everything is mispriced. There is fake stuff online everywhere. There's people out to steal your money all over the place. That isn't to say that there aren't good people. That isn't to say that there isn't exceptions. But people who are doing a good job and are treating you well are not generally the ones that are out in your face trying to get your attention. They're not the ones advertising to you on Facebook. They're not the ones all over the websites and so forth. forth. If you're finding information from abroad, if you're contacting places that are advertising online from this market, we tell this all the time. But I don't think very many people internalize this. It means you're going to get misled, and all those things are designed to funnel you into San Juan del Sur. And once you're there, everything's going to funnel you into communities that are going to put you in danger. And we're talking about people who are actually in danger, not just spent too much money. I cannot make it clear enough that unless you're an expert at moving abroad, unless you are confident at living abroad and really don't have to worry about all the things that I'm here to tell you about, then you need to steer clear of places like San Juan del Sur until you are that person. I'm not saying you should never go there. I'm not saying you shouldn't make it your permanent home. I'm saying you don't start there. It is not a soft landing. It's the hardest landing in the country. There is no place harder to adapt to than San Juan del Sur in Nicaragua. It is the place where you have to be the most expert. You have to be the most wary. You have to have the most money. You have to be the most on top of your game, the most alert all the time, the most making your own contacts, the most questioning everything you're told. You have to be so much more competent and confident in being an expat to go to someplace like San Juan del Sur rather than the rest of Nicaragua. This is the easiest country in the Western Hemisphere to move to. Point blank. It's so easy. Sure, Paraguay's right up there too. We have better flights, so we definitely trump them on that. But beyond that, this is as easy as it gets, unless you go to San Juan del Sur. But the thing that everyone says, almost universally, is, well, I want a soft landing. I want to be around people who speak English. They want these things, and I understand. Coming to a new country, you're hoping to be surrounded by other people who are doing the same thing, but that doesn't actually work in practice, right? It's kind of like, I want to learn to swim, so I'm going to hang out with the people on the beach who aren't swimming. Well, but that doesn't actually teach you to swim. It teaches you to watch swimming, but it doesn't teach you to swim. And so that is not a healthy process. And I totally understand why that mindset happens. Well, it feels like I'm living in the country because technically you are, but you're avoiding living in the country for the most part. And that's a little bit tough with a place like San Juan del Sur because it's a city or a small village, small city, large village. It is part of the country, but it's separate. Physically, it is separate. Socially, it is separate geopolitically from the rest of the country. It is its own entity, far away, and Nicaraguans think of it as a far-off place. We don't think of it as just a continuous part of the country. It's a part. And I understand that if you're coming from abroad, you probably don't realize this. Everything presents it as this is what Nicaragua is, which is surprising to me because it used to be Grenada that was like that. Everyone said, you're going to Nicaragua, and the assumption was just Grenada, but now it's starting to be San Juan del Sur because they've put so much time and effort into marketing it that if you're coming from abroad, everything funnels you there. But there's a reason for that. That's how they're making all their money, is funneling all the people into San Juan del Sur. So it shouldn't be your reaction. If you have any, and I truly mean any at all, emotional reaction that you're coming to Nicaragua and therefore you want to look at San Juan del Sur because you think it's going to make something easier for you, you're not understanding and you are not prepared for San Juan del Sur. If you're coming down and saying, I've looked at everything, and even though I understand it's going to be way harder, way more dangerous, I'm taking my risks, but San Juan del Sur just has the view, the location, our property that I'm willing to go through extra pain to be able to live there, that's when it's the right place for you. You are understanding that you're going to have to overcome more stuff. But too many people come down and are tricked into believing that somehow going to San Juan del Sur won't make things much harder or more dangerous for them. That is how you play into exactly the things that make it even harder and even more dangerous for you. You're in the most dangerous position because you're being tricked in that initial move, and now you are ripe to be preyed on. Even if you're well prepared and you know exactly what you're getting yourself into, of course, you're still kind of easy pickings because you're new. But a person who's going there very wary that they're making a dangerous decision is in a much better position. Imagine walking through a dangerous neighborhood. The person who thought it was a safe neighborhood and is walking around with their kids and just looking at all the buildings and whistling and blah, 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 blah. You're the most likely to get mugged, not the person who knows they're going into a dangerous neighborhood and is watching around and paying attention to all the people and keeping away from someone who might mug them. Right? It's simply, even though you're in the same spot, that attitude goes a long way. So putting yourself out there as, I'm just going to go to an enclave, that's going to be nice and safe, you're creating a dangerous situation for yourself within an already dangerous situation. Now, last night on the live stream, we were talking to someone who had a similar kind of situation. I don't know exactly what caused it, but they're coming down to Nicaragua, and instead of going to some place in Nicaragua where they can see things, going to a city or, an area with lots of stuff to do or one of the common areas, they somehow got hooked up with a private company that directed them out to a very remote, walled enclave area in the middle of nowhere. They slapped the name resort on it, and they thought they were going to a resort and going to be able to use it as a launching pad to go see Nicaragua. But the actual spot is anything but a resort. It is in a remote area at the end of a long dirt road and isolates them as much as possible from the rest of Nicaragua, to the point where it might be just as fast to get to most Nicaragua flying in from Miami than it is driving from there, and especially in an area that doesn't have cars and public transportation, because there's no village there. It's just an enclave, walled enclave in a very remote area. Now, in that case, they're only visiting for a little bit, so like many people who come down and visit, and I've had this happen with San Juan del Sur, right? People say, well, I just want a place to base out of, and so even though I know San Juan del Sur isn't the right place to be looking at, it was easy to find a hotel, and then they realize that they are 4 hours from the next thing they want to see. They didn't look at a map, they didn't check the roads, they didn't ask, they went for some really isolated community. Now, San Juan del Sur works if that's the only place you're going, because you don't need to travel around, but an isolated enclave, you're never going to get to see Nicaragua because you're so isolated that you're really far from things. But the mindset is the same, going after big advertising that's pushing things remotely and falling into that trap. Nicaragua is not a country. We say this so much, but you've got to internalize this. It is not a country that puts things online. You need to do this footwork. If you don't do a little bit of research, if you don't go out and stay in a major city, and I know it's a little bit hard when you haven't been here. How do you find these things? How do you do things? But the one thing you've got to let go is trying to replicate your experience in North America. Well, in North America, I would just go to this website and do this thing and not look at how Nicaraguans do it. You will fail every time. Can't be done. You have to adjust. It's an easy adjustment, right? Look at the things we're talking about. Stay at hotels in the cities. Go look at Airbnb, right? Look at the maps. Like, put in a little bit of work. We put so much information up on this show. There's so many other shows that put up information. Watch for the people. Don't watch the people who are coming through and making a YouTube channel. They're only here for 5 days. They have no idea, right? They're saying, well, I stayed in this resort. I did that. They don't know anything about Nicaragua. They don't know what they didn't see. They don't know what they didn't do. They don't know how much they overpaid. They have no idea. I love that guy who went to San Juan del Sur and made a video where he's like, look how cheap this is. And you can use American dollars and you're not losing any money, and you watch him pay, and you can watch him double pay for the thing. He's so clueless that on his own video, you could see the listed price and the amount that they charged him and watch him get ripped off on the video because of mistakes he was recommending other people make, right? Which was paying for using US dollars to pay for really small items that were worth far less than $1. So he was paying $2 for something that was like $1.05 because he didn't have change in Cordoba. He was overpaying by nearly 100%, and he was so clueless he didn't notice. Right? He couldn't do the monetary conversion. He couldn't read the things. And yet he was giving recommendations. That's the kind of stuff that often happens anywhere. When you get someone who's just passing through making a recommendation, they're not talking about how pretty the country is. They're not doing any research on it. They're just, I'm having a good time. I'm a rich kid on vacation. Here's my video. Right? Those things are dangerous. But look for the people who actually live here, who are actually giving advice and not selling anything. And pay attention to the things that we're doing and that we're saying to do. And instead of doing the exact opposite, consider that maybe we have some guidance, right? And I understand. We don't understand you're necessarily doing something that we're advising against because maybe we're not putting out enough warnings. But what I'm saying is that there are things that we consistently do. When you watch the videos and say, well, they're really successful. What are they doing? Think about the fact that, like, we don't go to enclaves. No one who's successful is going to enclaves. No one who's successful is choosing to put their homes in San Juan del Sur. No one is taking out leases in San Juan del Sur. We might go visit it for the weekend. My wife is going there in 48 hours, right? For a mini vacation. But she is not going there to buy a house or rent a house. And trust me, before we moved here, we seriously considered San Juan del Sur. I totally understand when you're abroad and you're looking at the marketing, it looks amazing and there are great things about it. And there are people who know what they're doing and live here full time who've chosen to live there. But those who are successful 100% of the time know that they're choosing to make things really hard, and they're willing to put up with those harder, more dangerous things in order to live in a place where they like the view, they just like the community, they like the selection of food, they like being close to the Costa Rican border, or whatever. There's lots of reasons that you might like San Juan del Sur. It is a really cool place, but it is doing Nicaragua on expert level. right? This is not the easy way to do Nicaragua. It is the hardest place in Nicaragua to successfully live. The hardest, bar nothing. You could live in the barrios of Managua. That's easier. You could live in Granada. That's easier. You can come out here to coastal Leon where it's super hot. That's easier. You can go up to the mountains far away from the capital. That's easier. You can go on the Atlantic coast and live in one of those communities that everybody wants to see and we never make it out to. That's easier. You could live in little tiny villages, big cities, downtown, on a farm. Doesn't matter. They're all easier than San Juan del Sur. That is not to say that San Juan del Sur is so hard that it isn't easier than a lot of other countries. That remains true. But within the Nicaraguan context, there is absolutely nothing that comes within scope of being as hard and as dangerous for you as San Juan del Sur. Danger not meaning violent crime, although it is some of the most, the heaviest violent crime, as little as it is, in the country. In a country where violent crime isn't a real concern, that it's a little bit more isn't a big deal. But it is not lower. A lot of people are like, well, it's safer, right? No, it's not safer. It's one of the most dangerous areas. Anywhere that dog's going to run into is one of the most dangerous areas. But it is one of the most dangerous areas within the country because you have all those expats there. You can't have all those expats together thinking that they're going to be getting somehow an easier time by avoiding Nicaragua, by avoiding the culture that they're in. That's never going to make you safer anywhere in the world. It's not how things work, right? By putting all the tourists together in one spot, by putting all the vulnerable people together in one spot, you're just advertising that these are the vulnerable people. That doesn't mean it's super dangerous, but it's more dangerous. So you just need to think about that and put it in scope. So a couple of the things that we learned in the last 12 hours that people really need to think about. One is just accept. San Juan del Sur is not in any way or close to an easy way to move into the country. That is the worst thing you can do as a general rule. Avoid doing that. And while there can be good experiences going there as your first place, it is the most likely thing to create your problems. Right? And I don't need to go into every detail. If you're not going to listen to me, you're not going to listen to me. Right? But I could go on for an hour, all the reasons why it doesn't make sense for you as a starting point. Again, you can always move there later once you know what you're doing. 2, avoid enclaves. They are not soft landings. They are hard landings. Just like San Juan del Sur, in general, enclaves or any resort claiming thing, anything that walls you away from Nicaragua is not going to service you well. That is not a way to go. If you live here, again, and you want to spend a weekend in one, that's fine. You choose Nicaragua and you decide, you know what, I just really like gated communities and I really want one in the middle of nowhere with no one around. That is up to you. But understand that it will not give you the Nicaraguan experience that people are thinking of when they watch this channel, watch Elton's channel and others. That is a different experience. Nothing wrong with it, just different and generally harder. And consider that you don't know the roads. You don't know what is making those places make sense until you get here. You need to have that bigger scope. And watch the videos and figure out what it is you want to do. Some of the things we always give advice about: don't rent places. Do not sign contracts unless you have a lawyer go over them. This is true anywhere in the world. Right? I do not go to the United States and do things without a lawyer when I'm not from the United States. I would not take out a year's lease, especially from an individual person, and basically everything in Nicaragua is like that. You don't have these big companies that have big reputations. There just aren't those big companies. So when you're renting, you're always renting from a person or a really tiny business that's basically operating like a person. You would never trust an individual with your family just because, well, they had a nice place to rent. You would always have a lawyer look it over. You'd always make sure you had some kind of protection, right? You would do that in the United States. You certainly would do it here because you're the foreigner and often they're foreigners, right? And be wary of foreigners because when you have groups of foreigners, you often have a lack of legal protections. Things that you may not think about is how often you may have, we're getting a little bit of light on the camera there, how often you may be dealing with someone who can just run away should something major happen, right? If you're in the United States, you're renting a place, someone treats you badly, you can sue them, right? They're a crook, you can go after them. What are they going to do? Hop a plane and move to another country? But when you're in a place like Nicaragua, a lot of the people that you're dealing with may not even be there, and they may have a really strong, we rip as many people off as we can. Anything goes wrong, they're over the border before the police can call them in, right? Long before they're ready to arrest them, they have fled the country. I can't tell you how often we hear that story. Someone comes in, they take as much money out of the other expats as they can, they gouge people, they run scams, they steal, and then they just take off. And eventually they get caught, or eventually they just can't re-enter the country. But they got their money and they took off. They didn't love this country. They wouldn't have been doing that, right? So There's so many mechanisms that put you at risk when you're in a small country and you're a foreigner, and especially when you're dealing with other foreigners. So be extra wary when dealing with other foreigners, right? Accumulate these things, but don't do things you wouldn't do in your home country. Don't take risks you wouldn't take in your home country, because you are a foreigner. There's things you don't know. You probably don't speak Spanish perfectly. Some of you do, but not that many. Assume you need some protections and treat it that way. That will take you a long way. Don't be looking for other expats. They are not your solution. Don't avoid them. Don't be like, I don't want to see other expats. That's probably not the thing to do. There's plenty of expats around, and there's plenty of good ones around. But those that are out seeking you before you've moved here, seeking you, that they don't know you, they're just groups going, hey, come join our group of expats. Why are they doing that? Because they're probably preying on you. They call it the expat MLM, right? Because everyone that comes in has to get new expats to keep the Ponzi scheme going, right? There's so much of that, and that happens anywhere that you have large groups of expats. Just be wary of that. Remember that desire for a soft landing is going to put you in danger. We're already, all the advice, all the things that we show you, we're trying to help you have a soft landing. Soft landings come from actually landing, first of all, and then having things go as smoothly and safely as possible. And that's really easy in Nicaragua for the most part. There are a few challenges, for sure. Finding mid-term rentals is quite hard. There are some things you have to accept as hard, but if you try to find a shortcut, that is how someone gets you, right? People knowing that you're desperate for shortcuts will prey on you, act like they can make that easy. They probably can by putting you in harm's way. So don't try to work around the system, try to work with the system. Watch what we do, learn from it. Don't try to avoid it. You'll have a much better result. But those hard things, those things that just remember, there aren't going to be easy exceptions. Don't be looking for enclaves when you first come. Don't be looking at Juan del Sur when you first come. Consider those expert level things that you will consider once you know the lay of the land. Then you can make educated decisions with full knowledge, eyes wide open, and you'll have a really great time. And then maybe you'll discover that those are the places you want to be. You'll have the tools to do so safely. Thank you for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ScottAllenMiller. It comes directly to me. It is like Patreon. As always, watch another episode. Get your comments down below. Check out all of our show notes for information, and I will see all of you tomorrow.